Welcome back. What is happening on America's college campuses? Students, it seems, or at least in isolated situations, but more than just one or two, are certainly angrier than we've seen them in some time, and increasingly are forcing university to make changes, or at least demanding them. And it's happening on a range of topics, from Halloween costumes and ethnic sensitivity to complaints over student loans to the highest profile protests, most recently over race, as we saw at the University of Missouri and elsewhere. Here's Andrew.
The University of Missouri Thursday naming their new interim president, Michael Middleton, a longtime law school professor.
We all know that the university has faced its share of troubling incidents, and we recognize that we must move forward as a community.
It was just Monday that now former President Tim Wolf and the university chancellor announced their resignations, bowing to mounting pressure from students and faculty protesting what they call racial injustice on campus.
This is what democracy looks like.
The turn of events in Missouri inspiring students on campuses across the country.
No confidence.
Now marching and rallying for change.
Really what's at question here is the racial climate on campus.
Raising concerns and some already getting results.
I committed to them that we will work to make this the best Yale it can be.
Yale devoting $50 million to increase faculty diversity, and Ithaca creating a new chief diversity officer position. But back in Missouri, the situation's still tense, with the Legion of Black Collegians tweeting this photo of a vandalized sign outside the Black Culture Center, and social media pictures showing nearly empty lecture halls after two Missouri college students posted threats online against black students.
Both of those students at the University of Missouri were arrested, and one claimed to have a deep interest in the Oregon College campus mass shooter, though we've seen very few campus protests that are focused on guns and gun-related issues. Rich?
Thank you very much, Andrew. So what is going on at college campuses, and should we, as some on the right are suggesting, be worried that a relatively small groups are now controlling what's acceptable for students? And for that, we turn to Barry Pearson. Barry is the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Suny-Purchase College. And Barry, this should be noted, this isn't just Missouri. We've seen this Ithaca College and other universities. There's a demand. Now, here's my point. It seems that there were some serious issues that on the surface did not get taken as seriously as they needed to, and there's some tone deafness coming out of Columbia, Missouri from the then president who suddenly resigned. But I'll use the Ithaca College as an example. The president even appointed a diversity person before these complaints were made, and now all of a sudden there's an insistence on his removal. Walk this out in real time. I'm sure these conversations have sparked internal dialogue, not just behind closed doors with you and university leadership at SUNY, but at every college campus, because is there a tyranny of, when I say minority, I don't mean black and white, but small voices that demand it? You're not even hearing the rejoinder as to what exactly happened. Innuendo seems in some cases to be driving the argument.
Well, I think that's one interpretation from a distance. When you're on the inside of these issues and you live them daily, they're often a part of a systemic condition at the institution such that students of color, frankly, feel marginalized. And over time, incidents build up such that students feel they have no option but to step forward and voice their issues in very public ways. In every case, the president becomes that target, because the president on any college campus has a great deal of authority and is seen as the person who can change the situation. So if a president is out of touch or insensitive or ignores these issues over time to continue to marginalize students, and let's be clear here, the students at Missouri who are protesting are not all students of color.
No.
There are a lot of, it's a very multiracial mix who are on that campus expressing the voice of this issue. Even on our own campus, as recently as yesterday, in a rally in support of those students at Missouri, it was a very mixed group of students who are saying, look.
Absolutely. And my point isn't it's black, it's white, and I believe that there's real issues, but I'm trying to find, where do you believe accountability, who decides, who shall decide is my point. What is an ugly incident that's isolated from two students that said horrific things here and should be prosecuted to the letter of the law? How is that reflective completely of an entire university? How many incidents does it take before accountability should? My point is, I don't know, and I imagine you guys don't know. Where is that line?
Institutions are always accountable. They're never not accountable. Every institution, especially in the SUNY system, has a code of conduct that students abide by. They agree to it when they enter your campus. So anytime you do not respond per that code of conduct, per that policy, you are at risk of tearing at the fabric of trust that you have.
But when does it become a pattern? Help me in terms of...
I don't think you wait to figure out if it's a pattern or not. You react every time. Because what you're protecting is the most precious thing that you have on your campus, which is the trust between you and your students.
You've obviously followed, take the most current one at Ithaca. Do you believe that should be a terminal offense for the president? I don't have a dog in the fight, but
No,
I'm just
I
trying
don't
to wonder, you know, how much, when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds,
Sure.
You're involving everything from hormones to alcohol and idiocy, right, on certain cases. Is it reflective of a broader culture, or is it...
Well, first of all, I think you have to recognize that any college campus is not set within a vacuum. And it's not immune to the larger national issues that we are experiencing. Every time a young black person is shot or killed, that is absorbed on college campuses. So those issues emotionally, psychologically, are not, campuses are not insulated from that. So to see this as isolated ecosystems from the larger whole is the first mistake of anybody in an institution.
It just seems to me that if I applied the same logic to your old line of work, that they'd be subject to recalls every time there was an unfortunate climate, let's say, and I'm not minimizing this. For all I know, the students of Missouri were right to demand a change. It certainly seems like the president didn't get it when you heard some of his comments, right? But I don't know. What do you think?
Look, the ills of society exist in academia, okay? But for a president to resign when we don't even know what the issue was does not set the right message. It does not. And all the talk about, you know, students are important, well, of course they're important. But a president makes mistakes just like any executive, and you got to go fix it. But I suspect you're going to see in campuses across the nation this whole notion of, I didn't feel good today about people coming up to me, and why shouldn't I mean, as a student protester in the 70s, okay, I understand the mindset, but there's a certain mob mentality that appears to be going on here, which is not good. And I don't think, you know, all the talk about institutional values, for the president to resign in that situation is wrong. For Ithaca College's president to resign, even though there are problems, just as there are in other areas, is not the right way to go. And what you do is you inflame an already difficult situation. And I think students across the way, just as we did in Kent State, suddenly get into this fervor, okay? Kent State, by the way, I believe we were doing the right thing in protesting. But the fact is, they believe that they're doing the right thing. And how far do you go? Where do you draw the lines? I think the president...
And also, you do have competing agendas that are getting conflated here. In Missouri, for example, some of the faculty that also walked out and protested, maybe not too coincidentally, less than 6 months earlier, they didn't get the health package they were looking for. You know, I guess assistant professors or you know, associate professors, excuse me, and the rest. So, do you worry that where does this start and stop?
Well, I think part of the interesting dynamic that's at work here is that there are going to be, as you say, conflating issues that happen. But in the case of any president that resigns, I'd suggest that, and you've already commented on this, that he's tone deaf, at least at Missouri, right? So at some point there's an evaluation made by the Board of Trustees, what have you, the regents, that can he walk it back such that he could earn the trust of the students in the institution again. In the case of the University of Missouri, clearly there was an assessment made. He can't walk it back. At Ithaca, he might have a chance to walk it back. Depends on what he does going forward.
Well, what about Smith? What about the college? What about all the other colleges that are now following? At what point does the administration stand up?
Why wouldn't it all be done individually? Why wouldn't it be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the specific circumstances of the campus? The one-size-fits-all, hey, the students are going to wind up with too much, and the schools are being overly sensitive.
And I don't even fault the football team in Missouri. They don't want to play. That's fine. That's their prerogative and stuff. But to me, it's a different issue, which is, let's say you don't have a university professor, because that's where this is going, who's even done anything wrong, who hasn't ignored anything, and they believe that the climate is such where it's a non-inclusive environment. A lot of people, we've talked about this, Dominic, a lot of college campuses, they have less than a 5% minority rate as part of the student body. I don't know that's an indictment on the chancellor, the school president, or anything else. I don't know about the applicant pools. I don't know about anything else. And I believe, when we talk about here about trying to promote as much diversity as possible. So that's not my point. But now you hold it against the president, and now you're going to say you're going to be fired here because there's not a environment where people feel that. I just don't know where it ends or where it stops. It seems that you're guilty till proven innocent, almost.
Or the other way to look at it is, you're guilty because you don't have a relationship with your students. And
what if they try, though, is my point. But still the students don't feel it's is that then terminal for that person?
Well, it may not be. But at the same time, I think at some point what happens is we think about these as isolated incidents, and we try to make an equation such that, does he deserve to be fired? I would suggest that probably what's happened is that this is over time, and the isolated incidences are the triggers.
Yeah, but you're too quiet, Dominic. I go back to, and I don't have a ton of time on this one, but you go back to your years in Syracuse.
So we don't have much time, so
no, but in Syracuse, right? If you didn't feel.
First, I started out at State University at Cortland. Now, what's missing from this conversation? I respect my colleagues.
Just get to it.
I wish he was my provost. You take a black kid, myself, out of the projects in the Bronx, the Throgs Neck houses, and ship me up to Cortland, where there's 50 other black kids on the campus of 8,000 kids. We're already lost. We feel isolated. There's no connection. We feel that everybody is against us. And then, as he also said, you turn to an administration that you feel is not there for you. He's right. If you don't have a relationship with your students, these types of things are going to happen. Because if I feel, the provost may not give me a meeting, but if I feel something bad has happened to me, if his door is open, that's half the problem right there. If he'll just sit there and listen. So Richard, and the reason why the president had to go, I mean, guys, let's not pretend.
Oh no, he had to go.
Let's not pretend. Yeah. Wait. A contractual agreement. The brothers on the football team said, I'm not playing, and the school was going to have to pay $1 million to the competing school. That's why he had to go. Period. It comes down to economics. And it always does.
It's interesting. We celebrate the idea of this should be a time of communication, of open thought and learning. We didn't even get into it, but now you have, I'm not sure what happened at Purchase, but who decides which costumes are permissible or not at Halloween? And I'm not talking about, horrific stuff like blackface. I'm talking about, somebody put on a Pancho Villa outfit and that was deemed improper. If the whole idea of college is an open laboratory for thought and discussion, is it getting harder for that now?
Actually, no. But the open thought laboratory includes open discussion about issues of race and the questioning of even the curriculum. Because often we get mired down in who's teaching, but you have to talk about what's being taught. And you have to allow students to voice their own relationship to the curriculum and how we've come as an institution to making those choices. Let me just say one thing about the Halloween costume issue. On our own campus, we don't seek to control how students express themselves, but we took Halloween as an opportunity to have a teachable moment, to talk about cultural appropriation and why certain costumes are offensive or not. Students were free to make up their own minds, but we did feel it was an opportunity to continue the conversation between the institution and its students, to broker that trust. And without that, I think we miss the opportunity to keep the atmosphere open and tolerant and respectful.
It's going to be a delicate balance, and I think it's even tougher now than a year ago.
Opened, Richard. It's going to be tough now because these kids are going to feel empowered and they're going to speak up. This guy should be the chancellor of the school system.
I'm with Scott on one thing. There is an element of who shall decide that I find a little troubling because I still don't know where the line is. I don't think anybody does. Sometimes it's clear. Sometimes it's a little vague. I'm not sure.
I consider you a brother. When I say this with love, it's tough being a black person in America. It really is.
No one's debating that, I think, Dominic. All right. I just want to remind everybody, obviously, the dominant story today and for the foreseeable future will be the unfolding situation in Paris. And if you're watching us on Fox, stay tuned. You'll have continual updates throughout the night. And I know I speak for everyone at the table. Our thoughts and prayers are with the folks in France tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back here on Monday. Till then.